For those of you on the phone, we do have quite a few people on. We've got 34 people on the call right now. So if you are not speaking, if you wouldn't mind muting your phone, it's *6 to mute the phone. If you're using the webcast, there's a little microphone icon that will pop up at the bottom of the page if you move your mouse down there. So please click that, turn it red with the X, with the line through it to mute your webcast. Carl Stevens is not here today, so Vice Chair Vicki Pickett will be running the meeting. Are you ready to call to order?
Are we done ushering people into the door?
You want to wait a couple minutes for that? We can do that.
You mentioned Shelley was getting some more people.
Yeah, she was letting some more people in. What'd you need?
I just wanted to see if we have our folks in or if we need to wait.
Yeah, Jen just let somebody else in.
Perfect.
While we're waiting, I'd like to point out I did make some changes to how our voting roster is set up for 2020. For each voting position, I put their alternates right underneath that person's name. So it's a little messier now, but it also is a little easier to find the alternates without having to search through footnotes. And I've also set it up so that we can actually track attendance right on the same page as the roster, so we don't have it on two separate pages from now on. And there's Holly. Hi, Holly.
Okay. All right. Well, it's 10:06. I think we need to get started respective of the time. So let's call the meeting to order. We're going to start with a roll call.
So for those on the phone, if you wouldn't mind, or if you're not a voting member, I should say, if you wouldn't mind, go to the task force webpage, and then right on that page, there's a button that says sign in for January 9th meeting. For those of you in the room who are not voting members, that's also a request that I have. If you can't do it right now, please try to remember to do it when you get back to a computer. And I will also send out the link to that as well so that you can get that reminder to sign in, because that's how we're going to be tracking attendance for non-voting members. And now for voting members, I'll go through the roll call. For CCI, Barb Kirkmeyer, Mike Wallace, or Mary.
Mike Wallace is on the phone.
Thank you, Mike. For CML, Brandy DeLange. Nothing heard. Cheryl Garcia is here.
I'm here.
Was that Brandy?
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. Tim Kunkelman is here. Mary Jane Rasher. Nothing heard. Wes Horn.
Here.
Hey, Daryl. Daryl, this
Yes.
is Mary Jane. I'm on. I think the meeting is on mute, so you have to unmute to say something.
Right. You can hear me, though, right?
I could,
Okay.
but I had to unmute for you to hear me, so. Just
Right, yeah. Once they get a certain number of people, it automatically starts muting them when they get on the line. Darla Joseph for ILEC rep. Darla Joseph. Nothing heard. We do have one vacant wireless position. Monica Aiken. Thank you, Monica. Ray Paddock or Lindsay Carr.
Lindsay Carr is present.
Thank you, Lindsay. Jay Slater, Aaron Harris, or Erica Stevens.
Jay Slater on the phone.
Thank you, Jay. Phil Campbell or Connie Johnson.
Connie Johnson.
Thank you, Connie. Jeanette Martin.
On the phone.
Thank you, Jeanette. Jeremy Duncan or Jennifer Kirkland. Thank you, Jeremy. You miss Jeremy. Okay. I was joking.
Thanks for traveling.
I'll try to bring in a higher voice.
There you go. Kimberly Cope, Val Turner, or Tracy Oldmeyer.
This is Kimberly. I'm on the phone.
Kimberly. Jackie Reynolds or Amy Butch. Thank you. Jennifer Kirkland or Beth Dobransky. Beth Dobransky. Nothing heard. Bruce Romero. Romero, I know, is on vacation. Paul Smith or Denny Shin? Denny? Deanie, sorry. Call me Derrill. Felicia Librans, that's another one I get wrong. Felicia Librans or Paula Null? Felicia or Paula? Concurrent, Jeff Irvin?
Present.
Jeff? Connie Johnson is present. Deanie Shin is present. Christina Butler is present. Vicki Pickett is present. Scott Newman? I think I saw it, yes. Sean Shear? Thank you, Sean. Mandy Stolzheimer I saw. Carl Stevens, I believe, is on vacation. Tom Holman or Monica Million? Monica Million's also on vacation. Tom Holman? Okay. Patty West, I think I saw. There you are. So we have 83% present, so we have...
Daryl
Yeah.
Beth Dobransky popped up on the chat, said she's present but can't get off mute.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we have 86% present, which is enough for quorum, or if needed, the super quorum for bylaws, recommendations for legislation, PUC rules, and tariffs, which I don't think we have any of that today anyway. Okay.
Okay, so for those, we have some folks that aren't voting members, so can we just go around the room, do introductions?
Sure, we can do that. So Darrell Branson, Public Utilities Commission.
Vicki Pickett with SEPCOM 911.
Speak up.
Okay.
Cheryl Garcia. And I'm Gil Garcia, helping Cheryl.
Ouch. Sorry.
And who are you representing today? I'm the head? I'm the head of Universal Access. On that committee? Okay.
I've already introduced myself. No, I'm not going to give the mic yet because it's too close to the phone. It'll cause feedback.
Oh, yeah.
Athena Butler, Denver 911. Jackie Louise, 911 Solutions.
Darrell Pratt, Chaffey County.
Scott Newman, City of Aurora.
Maybe not.
Maybe I was wrong.
Jeremy Duncan, Grand Junction Communications. West Orange Century Line.
Tim Compliment.
Patty West.
Did you have
Goes
entered
to the-
Council Progressive?
Try it again.
Yes.
I was like, Aurora in there.
No, loud.
They just have to stand up and protect.
Yeah.
There you go.
Project your voice like you're in the operations center.
That's what it was. I turned up the volume for the video. Sorry about that.
Well, he's taking it.
Testing.
Yeah.
Hey, that's.
You don't say testing, you say B4.
Amy Duke, AdCom. Becky Reynolds, AdCom. Sandy Dyer, Datamark. Sarah Rollins, Datamark. Jennifer Schwartz, Denver 911. Jamie Shin, Douglas County. Holly Bice, Colorado PUC. Shelley Nancy 911. Julia Beams, University of Colorado, Denver. I can't talk, I'm using my hands, so I'm Luke Adams, and I'm with the Colorado Commission for the Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deafblind. Monica Aiken, Sierra Wireless.
I think we only need the mic for the people in the back of the room, so I think we'll just leave it back there, and if you need it, if somebody needs to speak back there, please use it.
Okay, so next up, we've got the approval of the minutes. Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes from the November meeting? Any questions or issues, comments, changes?
Carol, can we actually use the mic, interpreter can't hear
Okay.
for everybody?
Oh, okay.
Are you sitting here, Cheryl?
You on?
Yep, okay. Okay, so next up is the approval of the minutes from the November meeting. Everybody had a chance to review them, any comments, questions, changes? Can I get a motion to approve?
Jeff Irvin, so moves.
Okay. Jeff, do you want a second then?
Yeah, I'll second, thank you.
Got it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, carries. Okay, next up is the confirmation of the member elections.
So this went out to everybody already, so it shouldn't be any surprises, but based on the ballots, first of all, there were several positions that were expiring at the end of 2019 that were unopposed, so those positions were automatically filled. That includes Barb Kirkmeyer for CCI, Brandy Lange for CML, Cheryl Garcia for the Eagle Access Community, Tim Kunkelman for BESP, Wes Horn for ILEC. We do have a vacant position that actually expired at the end of 2019, so it gets to continue being vacant for another 2 years unless we find someone to fill it. We'll be working on that. Ray Paddock for CLEC Void. And then getting into the 911 positions, there were 10 positions up for re-election or for replacement. And the winners are Danette Martin with Morgan County, Jeremy Duncan with Grand Junction Regional Communications Center, Beth Dobransky with Eagle County 911 Authority, Felicia Librand with Sterling Communications Center, Jeff Irvin with JCECA, Deanie Shin with Douglas County 911 Authority, Athena Butler with Denver 911, Vicki Pickett with JeffCom, Mandy Stolzheimer with Western Colorado Regional Dispatch Center, Carl Stevens with the Garfield County Emergency Communications Authority, and that's it. The bylaws do say that we need to confirm the winners of the election or the results of the election at our first meeting, so Madam Vice Chair, I would suggest that you call for a motion to approve the results of the 2020 elections.
Can I get a motion to approve the results of the elections? One from Jackie. Second from Athena. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
So the next item was the officer elections. So now that we have the full slate of members, it's time to elect officers. And what our bylaws say is that the vice chair serves one term, and then upon expiration, the vice chair's one-year term, he or she succeeds the position of chair for a one-year term. So congratulations, Vicki. As of the end of this meeting, you will be the chair. So the two positions that we have to select are vice chair and secretary. Per the bylaws, neither of these positions have to be a voting member of the task force. So how do you want to do this? You want to just call for nominations?
Nominations?
Yep.
Okay, so anyone want to nominate anyone or nominate themselves for the vice chair position? Anyone on the phone?
Carl's not here. Can we nominate him?
I think that's required, isn't it, right?
Okay.
How it works?
Got one nomination for.
Well, I can't nominate it. I can't nominate anyone since I'm not a voting member.
Okay, so Cheryl nominates Carl Stevens. Any other nominations? Unusual punishment that would happen on their vacation.
Just so everyone knows, it's a fairly low maintenance position. Since the PUC staff is required by rule to actually administer the task force, we do the most of the work, but we do bring you in to let you know of things that affect the task force or decisions regarding the agenda or speakers, things like that. So if you're worried about time commitment, I don't my guess is Carl probably spends maybe 2 or 3 hours a month on task force business, not including the meeting.
I won't let you.
Any other nominations? Okay. Or do we need to vote if we only have one nomination? Good.
Well, I think maybe we see if there are any nominations,
For secretary.
additional nominations for secretary, because if
Okay.
there's not, then we can probably just vote as a
For both.
slate.
Okay. Okay, so second up, we've got the position of secretary. Anyone want to nominate themselves or someone else? Again, it does not have to be a voting member.
Bruce is also vacation, isn't he?
So because commission staff is required by rule to administer the task force, we essentially we're going to act as the secretary anyway, so that's the reasons why I am currently the secretary. So I will nominate myself to continue filling the role of secretary. But if somebody else wants it, I would be happy to step down and let them.
I second the nomination.
I nominate Bruce.
Okay.
Daryl, this is Jeff. Can I make one comment?
Go ahead.
I was just looking at the bylaws, and the bylaws cause the vice chair, after serving a term of 1 year, to ascend to the chair position. So a
Correct.
caveat out there to anybody who steps in.
I believe Daryl gave that warning.
Yep.
Yeah. So. Okay. So we've got a nomination for Bruce Romero and Daryl Branson for secretary. Or
So since that one is contested, I would suggest having a motion to confirm the vice chair position first, and then we can have an election for the secretary.
okay. So one nomination for vice chair, and that was Carl Stevens. All in favor for Carl Stevens being the next vice chair? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Carl will be pleased, I'm sure.
Okay. And then next up for secretary, then we've got Daryl Branson and Bruce Romero. So
Do we
we
want
do
to?
a vote or?
Are you sure you want to nominate Bruce?
Just giving you a hard time. You want to rescind your nomination?
Okay, so we're going to retract the nomination
Or
for Bruce
retract-
Romero then?
retract it.
All right, okay. So we've got one nomination then, that's for Daryl Branson. Any other nominations? Last call. Okay, all in favor for voting Daryl Branson back into secretary? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
That was fun. Sorry, I'm just getting to, oops. Next item was, starting with reports, is the PUC staff update.
So next up, we've got the PUC staff update there.
Fairly short report this time. This did go out to everybody, and it's also available on the task force meeting page. Federal 901 grant program, I wanted to point out that a chart has been added to that page to show the current status of all of the grantees. So it basically steps it out, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or excuse me, there's just 5 steps. And you can see how many steps a particular 911 authority has successfully completed, and then the description of the steps is up above. In addition to that, I changed the frequently asked questions a little bit so you can see all of the questions, and then if you want to see the answer to that question, you just hit the little drop-down box and it expands the text out. There's a little bit more information in there now than there was before, so you might want to take a look at that. There is a grant agreement box on the page that you might want to take a look at. The way our contract manager is handling this is after we get all of the information from steps 1 and 2 of the process, the grant or the contracts manager will send out a grant agreement to the 911 authority. Actually, Holly's been handling getting those out to the, no, I guess John has been doing that, getting those out to the grantees. And really all we need is your signature on that grant agreement, and then you're ready to submit the reimbursement after the migration takes place. If your attorneys have some changes that they would like to suggest to that grant agreement, we can take those suggestions and they can go through the approval process. I do want to warn people that that can take up to several weeks. So if you get the grant agreement and it's still several months before you have to migrate, then we have time to send that to the State Controller's Office and to the State Attorney General's Office for consideration. But if you are migrating in a couple of weeks, we may not have time for that. So I'm just warning everybody, if you have changes, get those to us as quickly as possible. We do have both the standard grant agreement on this page, which is what everybody will receive. There's also an alternate that I've added here that's already been approved by the State Controller's Office and the Attorney General's Office. So if you want to consider that alternate instead, you can take a look at that. But the one that you will receive from our contracts manager is the standard grant agreement. Also on this page is the most up-to-date version that I have of the migration schedule. And this is already out of date because my understanding is that Aurora is not migrating today. Is that correct?
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. Hopefully it won't be too much of a delay, but otherwise the migration schedule on here is accurate. I'm holding this with my right hand. Sure.
Daryl, just if the group is curious, for the benefit of the group, the reason that that cutover was delayed slightly is yesterday during the testing, and Wes, correct me if I'm wrong, but yesterday during the testing, some of the star code transfers were still not quite right, and there was still the issue with one of the circuits that needs some additional testing, correct?
That's correct. And, star codes, should get all of them loaded in. And once they're all loaded in, that's good for everything downstream. First one, big one.
By the way, I forgot a bit of microphone etiquette. I'm still forgetting it. This is Daryl. For the benefit of our interpreters in the room, when somebody starts speaking, please identify yourself so that the interpreters can identify you. Moving on, under proceedings, we still have one open proceeding of note. That is the 911 reliability proceeding. I'll be scheduling a meeting for that group soon. We had held off on meetings until after the first migration. That migration should be done on Tuesday, so we'll meet after that again. To kind of give a recap of this, we have been looking at the cost of addressing all of the items that CenturyLink provided us in the proceeding in terms of areas where redundancy or network diversity need improvement and what the potential costs of those are. Because the only method we have right now of paying for those improvements is a tariff increase, and all of you right now are trying to figure out how to pay for the current tariff increase. My recommendation has been that we not move forward with a change to the tariff to pay for 911 network diversity improvements at this time, but we are going to continue to meet and review what effect the migration to the ESINet might have on that list of diversity items. So we'll be reporting back on that as time progresses. But as of right now, we are not making a recommendation to increase the tariff to pay for 911 network diversity improvement. Does anybody have any questions on that item? I know it's one it's been going on for quite a while, and we don't talk about it a whole lot at these meetings. So I want to make sure that everybody's aware of what I'm talking about and is able to participate if they wish. I'm not seeing any questions. Federal rulemaking, the FCC approved its report and order and notice of further proposed rulemaking regarding Z-axis requirements for wireless 911 location. They did that at their November 22nd FCC meeting. A summary of the contents of that order that I received through NASNA has been added to the folder for this meeting. So if you haven't seen that, go to the task force page. And then about halfway down the page, there's meeting materials. And in the meeting materials for today's meeting, there is a summary, it's the last item in there, summary of the 11/22/19 FCCC access order. So that everyone's aware, I also added a document in here. This is the slide deck presentation from the FCC to the fall NASNA meeting in Minneapolis. I added that slide deck presentation in here. It's very dense. There's a lot of information in here, so I don't want to go through it all. But if you are going through it and you have questions about any of the items in here, I can potentially answer those for you or pass the questions on to David for the FCC.
Hey, Daryl, before you move on, this is
Yes.
Kimberly.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a question about diversity docket. I just couldn't get off mute fast enough. So I apologize for having you go back up. But I had a question about CenturyLink and their filing to the FCC. Do we have a more recent filing that's going to be provided for this group to review before our next meeting?
My understanding is that we were going to get an updated version of that since CenturyLink had to file that updated 911 report to the FCC in, I think it was October. Wes or Tim, can you speak to that?
Yeah, you know, we last talked, this is Tim Kunkelman, by the way. We last talked about providing that update, but also knowing that the EZNet migration was going to have an impact on that next report. So we certainly can provide the latest report. But again, I don't know what the value is going to be since we are going to have a whole series of migrations this year. But yes, we can provide that. How about that? That's a short answer.
I think that would be great, Tim, and I know that everything is going to change as these deployments start to be completed, but from my notes, I was just tracking that report was going to be provided in the docket, so we would at least have that to reflect on any changes from the previous one to that one as we're just moving forward.
Daryl, sorry about that. This is Daryl. Yes, I agree. I think if nothing else, it will give us a fresher baseline than to compare any changes that the SINET migration causes to that list. Federal legislation, absolutely nothing has changed since our last meeting 2 months ago. None of these items have moved at all. I know that's a huge surprise to everyone. But we'll continue to monitor and see if any of these actually move. Colorado legislation, the Colorado General Assembly has returned to session. The current version of the 911 surcharge legislation, as of the time I wrote this report, was on the Legislative Committee webpage. It has now gone through a drafter through the legislative sponsor. So there is a more current version, but I don't know if that version is public. I don't know if the sponsor would feel comfortable with us posting that or not. So maybe you can ask for that when you have your meeting with her. Sometimes they like to keep that close to the chest for a little while until they work out some of the details. So the most recent public version is still on the Legislative Committee webpage. I have not heard of anything else other than the possibility that there could be legislation to include public safety telecommunicators in requiring workers' compensation for work-related PTSD, but I haven't heard if that bill is going to move forward or not. That was a couple of months ago that the original sponsor of that bill had been talking about moving forward with that amendment, but I don't know if that's still the plan or not. And that is my full report. Anybody have any questions?
Anti-swatting? Question regarding the Anti-Swatting Act. What is it?
This is Daryl. It is a bill to increase penalties for swatting. If you're not familiar with what swatting is, that's when somebody spoofs a phone number to 911. Oftentimes it's actually done over a non-emergency line, but they spoof a phone number and say there's a hostage situation at X address, when really they're trying to prank somebody by creating a police response to another person's address. That is a very dangerous thing to do, obviously, and people have been injured from such incidents. So there was a bill to increase the criminal penalties for that type of act. That seems like it would be a nice bipartisan supported bill, but it hasn't moved since March of this year, so I don't know if that'll go anywhere or not. Any other questions?
Who's the sponsor on the search?
On the surcharge bill, the primary sponsor is Julie McCluskey from Summit County. There is a co-sponsor in the House of Rod Pelton, so we have a Democrat and a Republican. And my understanding is that they have tentative support for co-sponsors in the Senate, both the Democrat and Republican, Quorum and Gonzalez.
What's the guy's name?
Rod Pelton. He's Eastern Slope, or Eastern Plains.
Yeah, way east.
Way east.
We're the-
West Kansas.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Daryl, you said it was McCluskey, Pelton, and who else?
McCluskey and Pelton in the House. In the Senate is Quorum, C-O-R-A-M, and Gonzalez.
Thank you.
Gonzalez, I think, is the Senate, he's the Senate president or something.
Maybe it is.
Yeah. So, big hitter. Any other questions? And Athena and Jackie will you'll give a more detailed report on that. In fact, I know Jackie and Athena have to leave for a meeting, so Madam Vice Chair, I would suggest adjusting the agenda a little bit and letting them give their report next.
Okay, how about we do the legislative committee report then first?
This is Athena. So, as Daryl was mentioning, the drafter has given us the first draft. We have a meeting at 12:30 with them to start the work on that, to really work on the language that has been presented. So far, all the work that's gone on over the last 23, almost 24 months, it's coming to a head, obviously. Representative McCluskey sees this as a late bill, or 4 or 5 on her list of the 5 bills that can be moved forward, with a timeline coming up of about January 29th, I believe, to present. So we've got a lot of work to do over the next couple of weeks. We have met with the Fire Chiefs Board, the Sheriff's Board, the Police Chiefs Board, AARP, and quite a number of different organizations. And really, when I say we, I don't mean me because I was out, but the rest of the team that's really been doing a lot of the work on this. So there is a lot of forward progress that is happening with this. We do know that we will have some who may still oppose or remain neutral. The gist of the bill in terms of moving forward with updating so much of the legislation is in there. And again, the next steps really are working on the language as it's been presented to us in the first draft, which literally we just got yesterday morning, and we were at the law enforcement conference, and so we were really tied up and still trying to see all the language that is in this one.
So to add to what Athena said, basically, I'm going to ask the same thing I asked last time. Please talk to your local sheriffs, your local police chiefs, your local city council, your local commissioners. We need support for this bill. It's great if they're neutral, but we need support. And I know that there's a lot of different things in this bill that are back and forth, and not everybody's wholly comfortable. We've had meetings to try to get this bill to a place where we feel it'll be a good enough bill to be passed in the Senate and the House. As you all know, your tariffs are increasing. You're either going to have to increase your local funds. There is the statewide supplemental surcharge as a piece of that bill. That statewide supplemental, without it, you will really have to increase your surcharge amounts at a local level. So there's just a lot of pieces. You're welcome to read the draft we have. As soon as we get draft language, we will get that out to the entirety of the task force. Again, we are meeting with them today at 12:30. I fell asleep at 1:30 last night trying to go through it. So anyway. Question?
Athena, I apologize again, this is Scott. So my city management. Thank you, sure. I apologize, this is Scott Newman again. So my city management is meeting with the council tomorrow to brief them. So just confirming again, did you say those two senators are sponsors or they're just in support of?
Sponsors.
So those 4 people are sponsors, who the hell two? Okay.
I think Cheryl had a question. No?
Questions?
Would it be possible to have some sort of maybe short talking points document that where we could approach CEOs on?
Yes, we do. We have a document called the problem solution document. It is a great talking piece. It's what I've been using because it just very succinctly runs through the 10 big pieces of this legislation. The other document we have is a fact sheet about the statewide supplemental surcharge, because that seems to be one of the biggest contentions with our local governments, which makes sense. So we do have a talking point list for that.
So Daryl, just so everyone knows how to get to those talking points, you go to the task force webpage and you click on committees. Go to the legislative committee. Bottom of that page, there's a box that says current initiatives. That has the versions of the legislation, the most recent versions of the legislation that we're able to provide, as well as an executive summary. The executive summary was mostly the work of Kimberly Culp and Matt Gage. In addition to that summary, there is a graphic that Jackie was talking about that goes through the top 10 changes that the legislation makes. And it's 2 pages. And I've seen Jackie use this multiple times in talking to potential sponsors and other legislators, as well as the Sheriff's Association and the Police Chiefs Association yesterday, and it is, I think, a very helpful tool for explaining what the bill is about. And then, because really the biggest change in the bill is that supplemental statewide 911 surcharge, and people have a lot of extra questions about that, there is also a frequently asked questions document in there that you can print out. And again, we kept that to 2 pages, the idea being it's on one piece of paper if you print it front and back. So it's not overly, it doesn't overwhelm them, but it goes through the reasons why we need a statewide 911 surcharge, who decides what the money is used for, how do we keep the legislature from raiding the funds, because that's been a big concern of a lot of people, and so we talk about some of the protections that were put in the legislation to prevent that, and what happens if we don't get a statewide 911 surge, or a state 911 fund. Because the results of that are, one, a lot of you are going to have a lot of difficulty paying those increased monthly recurring charges from the BESP that are coming, and 2, we won't necessarily, we won't have an appropriate method for paying for next generation 911 improvements. And I can send that direct link out to everybody after the meeting today as well, so you don't have to search for it, but it is available through the task force page.
That's the big part that we're working on in terms of legislation. And just as a reminder, I need to reach out to get an update on the PTSD amendment that Representative Singer was working on. So I haven't gotten a recent update on that piece. And the other piece is with the state, and the state is leading that one on dealing with people in crisis and the dispatch response to that. You've been involved in that. We're continuing to have meetings about that. That's not going to go forward this year, but we're really hoping that the work that's being done with that one, in conjunction with our team, that one will get back on the ballot for later next year.
Questions? Any other questions for these guys? Thanks so much for all your work. Sounds like a little Herculean task. All right.
How many hours do you think the two of you put in on this?
I haven't added them up.
That's a lot.
A lot of hours.
Every day this week so far, there's been something.
Wow. Well, good job, guys. It's exciting to get it to this point, too. All right, so we'll go back to the agenda. So I'm on the ESP report. CenturyLink, do you have anything?
Don't have any updates for today, no thanks.
Nothing from CenturyLink, okay. Anything from Intrado? Or what? Intrado.
You're in trouble.
Okay. Mary Jean, did you have anything?
I lost her.
Okay. All right, standing committee reports, the agenda committee. Here.
This is Daryl, nothing really new to report, just a reminder that if you go to the, don't need a reminder from my dentist's office right now. If you go to the task force webpage, go to committees, go to the agenda committee, there is a document on there where I have listed potential future speakers. These are just ideas that have come up during task force meetings or that other people have sent me that I have kind of spaced out into future meetings. If you have any suggestions or additions or changes to this list that you would like to see, please let me know. The agenda committee does actually have a membership, but I haven't called that group together recently because we have enough potential topics going forward. But if we run out of topics, then I'll call a meeting of that committee.
Okay, next up we've got the bylaws committee. Kimberly, did you have any updates?
This is Kimberly. A couple of items. So Daryl did bring up some changes or some issues in the bylaws that I'm going to be reviewing. Not sure it's strong enough that the committee needs to meet to talk through making changes at this point, but hopefully next week I'll have time to really dive into that to see if we need to reconvene the group to make a revision to the bylaws. So we should have a formal report next time we meet.
Okay.
This is Cheryl. I'm suggesting an amendment to the bylaws. Because being a person with a disability, I only know how to handle myself. I would like to add another seat for someone who is deaf, blind, or hard of hearing, because their situation is completely different from mine. And Luke.
You should have a
that's line or hard of hearing. I agree. It's possible.
And that's what I'm asking. For. I will email Kimberly.
Okay, and Cheryl, I do have your email from before we had an exchange about the voting member and the representation, so I can take the additional requests that you have to the bylaws committee when we talk about the change that Daryl brought up as well.
Cheryl's asking, when is that meeting?
Cheryl, I don't have it set yet. I've got a couple of other priority items that I need to take care of this next week, and then I'll be able to regroup with the committee members and do a doodle poll for the meeting.
I don't want to go.
This is Daryl. Cheryl, are you a member of the legislative, or excuse me, the bylaws committee? I will make sure that you are notified when that gets scheduled. And something I suggested to you, and I think it's still a good idea, is prior to that meeting, if you could write up your suggested changes, actually create a draft revision of the bylaws. They'll give the bylaws committee something to actually look at, and maybe that's something that Luke could work with you on.
Cheryl's asking, Luke, are you interested?
It will really depend on what, but yeah, definitely let me know and we can talk about it.
Oh, all right.
Just so everyone knows what the changes that I sent to Kimberly were about, there's a section in the bylaws that talk about election of officers. And it actually calls for election of officers to take place at the November meeting, but we don't do the election of members until after the November meeting, so it doesn't work. So it's really more of a logistic issue of suggesting that we change the election of officers to the January meeting, which is what we actually did, because we can't elect officers until we know who the voting members are. Anything else, Kimberly?
Nope, that's it for bylaws. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kimberly. So next up, we have the Equal Access Committee. Any updates?
Holly? Do you want to jump in as well?
Sorry, I missed them.
Equal access.
Oh. Go for it, Cheryl, if I have anything additional on the
I have a video on speech to speech. Say that again. Andy? And he is a friend of Holly's and mine, and he's in the video. Is that what you said? Okay, and he's in the video. He's in Seattle. He works for Sprint.
He works for himself, but he partners with friends and other relay companies to expose people about speech loss.
And he won an award for that. And what do you want me to? Okay, that's it for now? No.
She wants to play the video?
Oh, she wants to play the video.
Okay. So to do that, I have learned, you have to turn this off. Turn this off. Hey, how else will I get my tablet?
Different about my speech when I was and blocking in my speech. Life for a person that can be very difficult. Talking takes a lot of physical and mental energy that I think a lot of people don't understand. And you really can't understand unless you deal with it on a daily basis. Talking on the phone was very difficult because I never knew how they were going to react. Would they hang up on me if they heard me stutter, or would they think that I was trying to holler? I had that happen before too. I would often have someone make telephone calls for me. Since I discovered speech, I make all my own phone calls now. I'm able to have the relay operator tell the person who answers the phone that I am a person who stutters, and that sometimes it takes me a little bit longer to get my words out. And I think when I'm able to advertise the fact that I stutter, it makes me much more comfortable. It's not some big shameful secret that I'm trying to hide. The speech is a wonderful service that has dramatically improved my life, and I believe anyone with a speech is different. There's nothing more empowering to me than knowing I can do something for myself. And I want people to know that this service is available. People who stutter or have any kind of speech or communication difference, we're really no different than you. The only difference is that sometimes it takes us a little bit longer to get our words out, but we have a lot to say too, and a lot to offer the world, and we just ask that you be patient. We're people too, and we can do anything that other people.
Any questions? I'd like to. Something have to go. I would like to start having a different video each meeting. And then Cheryl has some items that she would like me to read, some of the things that she's been doing. Okay. As she says here, I have a 3-minute video, which we just saw is there are a number of trainings coming up. Is everyone signed up on co-train? Come on. If you have an account, you can sign up. For different classes. And she further says you can find all kinds of classes. She also says if anyone has a training, let me know. I can post it. Coming up is a regional training and exercise planning workshop on January 15th. This is important to me because before I have a question. And they what? They won't let me ask it. Tell someone else. That makes me frustrated. Because the whole community is what? Not getting it out. Movement. The whole community movement. They have to let me in. You guys lighten up. So she has something else here, and you can come up and take a look at these from Cheryl after the meeting, and she has another one January 31st, Adams County Government Center, First Responder Emergency Planner Training. It's on AFM. Access and functional needs. All day. And it's free. And they have lunch. I'll be there. Next week is the TEPW, January 15th, Training Exercise Planning Group. Is that that's what I just showed. Okay. And the other one that I just showed was the one on the 31st, from 8 to 4. And you must register through CoTrain to get that one. Anything else? We have our SEMA conference in London, February 25th through 27th. I've been doing this since 2011. I will be in charge of the Comfort Corner. And you have puppies too, don't you, Cheryl? Are there any questions? Leslie says, I'll be sending this to Daryl, my notes. If everyone on the are you all reading the what? Newsletter? Yeah. From RERC. I will, on wireless, so, check that out too. I have one person. Do what? There will be a test. And that's all.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Prepaid and collections, Jackie, any updates?
We met a couple times about the, recent update that Daryl made to the surcharge, not the surcharge, the wireless, lost my words. The wireless.
Prepaid wireless.
Prepaid wireless distribution. And Daryl sent out a survey. I hope you're all able to answer that survey, and I'm gonna let Daryl go with the results of what the community thought moving forward for the next couple of years, so we have an net to get good statistics on wireless traffic.
So the majority, and I did send this out to the 911 authority representatives, so most of you have probably already seen this, but the majority chose to continue using the wireless, or excuse me, the alley retrieval reports from CenturyLink to determine the annual percentages for prepaid wireless fund distributions. The document that went out explaining the difference between the different options showed the numbers as we had them at the time, which was missing the month of June. Because that's what everyone voted on, that's the percentages that I'm using for 2020. Because the same month was missing for everyone, my assumption is that it probably doesn't change the percentages that much. If it was just missing for some people, it would probably be a problem, but since it was missing for everyone, I think the percentages are probably pretty accurate. But I have already started working on the percentages for 2021 now, so that I won't have to scramble at the end of the year like I did this year, and I can take care of any errors or missing files that come up as the months go on. But I did want to let everyone know what that is. That was the result that the group chose to continue using those alley retrieval reports, at least until we start getting the ESI, the new reporting from the ESInet. But that won't be available until after everybody has already been migrated over to the new network. Anybody have any questions? Tim?
Did you say that, are you or Holly getting the report sent from Lisa?
Lisa is sending to them to both me and Holly. Any other questions?
Take it back for the report committee.
Well, first, we skipped one, so there's the outage committee, and I won't spend a lot of time on it because I think we're getting a little behind. But I did want to point out that if you go to the committee's page and go to outage committee, hi Jackie and Athena. There is now an outage dashboard. Actually, you don't even have to go that far. Let me go back to the beginning. If you go to the task force webpage, there's now a new link right on the first page that says outage dashboard. So if you click that, and you're patient, it will pull up the 10 most recent outages that have been reported to the Public Utilities Commission. And then the graphs are right on that page. Now those graphs are wrong right now because I have not updated them yet for the new year. So all of the ones that are year to date are incorrect, so I'll have to fix those, but before the end of the month, I'll get that taken care of. But this is now an easier way to get to all of the graphs that show the current statistics. Another graph that I've added to this page is showing the percentage of outages that are alley only versus full outages, because I think that has been a useful graphic for us. Eventually, all of those alley outages should go away as everybody moves over to the ESI net, because they'll be delivered over the same pathway that the voice calls are. But for 2019, we ended the year with 70% of our outages being alley-only outages, which is a big increase from previous years. I'm not sure what has caused that. I do have 2 outages that I'm going to be starting special investigations on. One is a recent outage that it was reported to me that it was an alley outage in Fairplay and Montrose. I've been told that it also affected Larimer County, and I believe one other county has told me that they were affected. I sent an email out asking if anybody else was affected. We'll be starting a special investigation on that.
Daryl, for that outage?
Yes.
It wasn't reported, the dispatcher never reported that they noticed an issue.
This is Mandy with Wesco. For that outage that Daryl's speaking to, that impacted Fairplay and Montrose, that's the region my center covers, and none of the dispatchers indicated that they noticed it. So I think with some of these alley outages, when we come back to the PSAP, I think some of us need to re-educate our staff on recognizing when something doesn't look right on their screen, because that's what I'm seeing in my center, is they just work through it. They become adaptable. The telecommunicators become adaptable, but I don't know the impact. So to my knowledge, there was no significant negative impact. But.
And this is Kimberly with Lita. Of our 4 alley links, 3 of the 4 were down. So that means 22 911 trunks, whenever they received a call, did not get an anti-alley dip. So we had a significant impact for the duration of that outage, and we received 0 reporting from CenturyLink. But I agree, dispatchers tend to just work through it. In our case, they were using Rapid SOS to try and get the information. So they used their tools great, but there still was an outage that wasn't reported by CenturyLink to us, at least.
And I don't remember, this is Daryl, I don't remember what the other one was, which other outage met the threshold, but I do have it on my to-do list. So those of you who are on the outage committee, I'll be sending those out soon.
Daryl?
Bruce, or Joe, sorry, go ahead.
If you could just repeat, the alley outages, are they always due to transmission lines being severed or interrupted, or is it ever a processing problem?
The question was, are the alley outages due only to transport issues, or are they sometimes a processing issue? I don't know if they're ever a processing issue. The ones that I've seen are either a transport issue, like a line being cut, or they're a bad card, so it's an equipment issue. Does anybody have any questions about the outage committee?
Daryl, this is Ron Loban. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just wanted to, I didn't know if you guys were aware of the outage that we had in Silverton last month. It took place on, I'm trying to find my information because I was on vacation at the time. There was a fire in town and it took out a fiber line behind the building and took out all cell phone connectivity, all 911s were down. And I think that was the 22nd of December when this happened. And we didn't get 911 phones back until the 23rd.
This is Daryl. Yes, I was aware of that outage. It is one of the things that's difficult to explain to people sometimes, but the part of the 911 call flow that the commission has authority over is from the point that it reaches CenturyLink to the point that it's delivered to the call center. So because your call center is not actually in your community, it's not considered a basic emergency service outage, even though it is for your people, for your citizens, a 911 outage. So that's why it's not on our list, but I was aware of it. I know there are a lot of people that are looking into that particular outage as well. I know it impacted a lot of your businesses as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So reports committee, there's nothing this time. Every other meeting, we will have a report be approved from the task force to the commission. We did that at the November meeting. That report was filed, so I don't have anything from the reports committee this time.
Okay, next we've got the EZNet users group, Bruce Romero, who's on vacation. Is there anybody else from that group that wanted to report anything on that committee?
Kimberly is the vice chair. Kimberly, are you prepared?
Sure, yep, and I'm still on. So we've had really good attendance on that committee, which is great. We have a pre-meeting where the 911 folks can talk and then document issues and concerns. We package those up, get them over to CenturyLink for CenturyLink to then respond. And I think the flow has worked really well with communication. Again, attendance has been great. As you heard already from Aurora, their cut's being pushed a week. I'm working through some of those last critical issues. Just for everyone's attention, we have several PSAPs that are cutting in January and into February, and this is crunch time. So if they have concerns, if they're not ready, if things are outstanding, they really should be communicating and looping in the chairs of the EZNet group so we can help facilitate that. The information or the struggles they have could impact other deployments. So we want to just make sure that if they come across something that needs to be done on the PSAP authority side that perhaps was overlooked in the checklist, that we can be passing that information on. So if there's any things that you're experiencing, Scott, Rob, from Aurora's perspective that you think is good information to share down the road with AdCom and with the Brett's PSAPs, that's the kind of stuff we want to make sure is being handled at the EZNet group, along with the information that we need CenturyLink to be tracking and documenting. So everything's going good. Of course, there's going to be hurdles and roadblocks with a project of this nature, but pushing it a week for these last few items, it sounds like everything that they've encountered so far, they've been able to work through with the engineers and resources required. So I think the EZNet group itself has been a good addition to the task force, and I think it's doing what was intended and contemplated when this was established in the tariff. Does anybody have any questions for me about how that group is flowing or where to find the information or documentation?
Not seeing any questions in here. Anyone else have any questions for Kimberly? Great. Thank you, Kimberly. Okay. Next up is the 911 Colorado Foundation. I don't have an update. We've got the Colorado Public Safety Broadband update as well.
I'm sorry, that broke up. Are you ready for CBO?
Sorry?
Yes.
Yeah. CBO. Yes, go ahead.
I'll keep it short. Basically, one of the things that this group may be interested in, can you hear me okay? Because it coming back as junk to me.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. So one of the things this group may be interested in is I will be working with the PSCR, PSCS, excuse me, I was thinking about something else, later on today about getting another report from FirstNet powered by AT&T. We're about 6 months since our last report, and basically what those reports do is FirstNet comes to the PSCS and just informs about where they're at on certain things like their build out in locations that you're interested, where their towers are at. Also, another thing they look at is deployables and where we stand at that. They've also had some changes, I think, in the last report for single users, like somebody who was a volunteer, you could only have one device on the FirstNet network. Since then, they've changed that policy, and so you can have one, like a mobile device, you can have one tablet, and you can also have a wearable on the same account. So again, we'll be working with PSCS to get a date for that report. That is an open it's an open meeting, and I would strongly encourage you to attend and get your questions answered. The only way that you can hear those reports is through the PSCS, or if you are a FirstNet customer. So this is a good chance, if you're not a FirstNet customer, to find out how the build is going. Colorado Broadband Office is continuing our efforts to help not only the entire state with broadband, but specifically, I am tasked with helping in areas that relate to public safety. For example, as was just mentioned, the Silverton fiber cut. The CBO was instrumental in getting service restored back to that area by garnering all the resources that we could pull in to go up there and help us get some sort of connectivity. As I understand that cut, there were only a few POTS lines that were available at that time. And so it really crippled public safety 911 service in the area. To that point, we actually, the CBO is working with the Ute, Mountain Ute, and the Southern Ute tribes, as well as the southwestern area of the state, to work on resiliency and redundancy. We have a company that we're working with that is actually running a fiber run through the Southern Ute tribe. And if you are in that area and you would like to know more about that, or you would like to, it's your concern to have resiliency in that area, if you could reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to get you connected in those talks and those meetings. We would like to find out what all the issues are that are being faced, and see if this opportunity might help you in that area. Again, we've been doing several things. We were also instrumental with the Boulder mudslide in helping get some connectivity out there. So if you have an issue, it doesn't hurt to send me an email, give me a call, and we can see if we can assist in getting your service restored or figuring out what's going on. But again, let me just say that the Colorado Broadband Office stands here to serve you. If there's anything that we can help, please don't hesitate to reach out. This is Ed Mills, and you can reach me at ed.mills@state.co.us. Thanks, Daryl.
Any questions for Ed?
Okay, PSC report, do you have any updates? No updates?
We haven't met.
Have not met. Okay. Anything on the SWIFT report, Glenn Fleisch?
I don't know if he's on the call.
Okay, not sure if he's on the call. Okay. Division of Fire Prevention and Control report. Monica is on vacation. However, I attended the Fire Commission meeting on Tuesday as a proxy for Monica. Although right now they're not addressing anything specific to 911, their major focuses are going to be things like statewide coordination for major events, training, staffing, and funding. Those are going to be their main points. However, it's good that they have a 911 representative there, because eventually that is going to be something that's going to, we're going to have to keep a role in that. So. Next up, we've got the old business, Daryl, the 2019 standards document.
So, Commission rules direct the task force to produce a list of recommended standards for the Commission to consider when it is reviewing proceedings involving 911. We put out our first one in 2018. We did not put out one in 2019. I provided a draft revision to that list to the task force, and there was a suggestion that it needed to go back to some subject matter experts. I did share that list with both Christian Militu with Intrado, as well as Tom Guthrie with Rapid SOS. They did provide some minor tweaks to it. Let me see if I can get back to that document so we can pull it up on the screen. They did provide some minor tweaks to it. They weren't very substantive, but there were some minor changes to it. And the problem with having so many nested folders, it takes forever to get anywhere. Recommended standards, so now it says 2020 recommended standards. So this version actually does reflect the changes that I received from Christian, which I think there was only one change from him. Tom had a number of suggestions, some of which I took and some of which I couldn't, simply because he suggested adding some informational documents and recommended practices rather than standards. I know that that's one of the things that this task force has discussed in the past, and was decided that we wouldn't include those type of documents in this, that we would only include actual standards rather than informational or technical documents. So I didn't include all of his suggestions. I did include some of them, the ones that were relevant to what we have here. So one of the changes, for instance, was just making sure that, if I can get to it. So one of the items was changing where we have the ED, oh, here we go. This used to say EIDD, new terminology is EIDO, which doesn't refer to a specific document, but refers to the data object itself. So those are the types of very minute technical changes that were made to this. So unless anybody has any questions, and this was sent out with the rest of the documentation, so hopefully people have had a chance to look at this. If anybody has any suggestions, questions, or other comments, I think now would be the time to hear them. Otherwise, I would ask that there be a motion to approve the standards.
Making a motion to approve the standards document as presented. Motion from Mandy, second from Wes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Carol? This document has a specific role with standards, but is there a reason or a benefit for the task force to maintain, documents that are best practices or technical? Would that be of use to the members?
So the question from Joe was, this is a specific document that is required in rules, but would there be a benefit to maintaining another document with best practices, or am I paraphrasing?
Technical standards, like we saw with the other things that Tom had provided that didn't fit this.
I think that's a question this task force could explore. I don't know. I know that one of the issues with putting standards in the rules in the first place was that there was disagreement among the parties to the rulemaking as to whether something was a standard versus a best practice versus a technical document, and that's why we ended up kind of breaking it out of the rules entirely and making it a document that the task force will update annually. I think that would probably be acceptable to the parties that objected to that back in 2017, if it were a separate document and clearly stated that these are not standards, these are best practices suggested by the task force. But I don't know if anybody else has an opinion on that.
Any other thoughts on that?
So to that point, would the task force be interested in me maybe reaching out to Christian and Tom and anybody else who wants to submit possible inclusions to that best practices list and maybe bring something back to the next task force meeting.
If you have time, sure.
Oh, that's full.
Great. Okay, so it looks like we've got lunch. Do we want to push through the new business, or do we want to take a break, take some lunch, and then get on with new business? Right.
Yeah, just because of the people on the phone, maybe we should push through.
Okay, we'll push through. All right, up next is new business, public education, Daryl.
So I have been asked by the executive director of DORA to consider creating a outward-facing website for the task force's 911 program. Just trying to think through the best way to do this. I don't want to create another committee. I really don't. But I don't think it should just be me putting it together either. So I wanted to get some thoughts from the group as to what do you think the best way to do this is. One thought I've had is to maybe work with the resource center director to put together a joint website for an outward-facing public education website from both the PUC's 911 program and the resource center, providing public education tips. There's already some of that information on the resource center website that we can probably port over and turn into its own website. But I wanted to get input from the task force if you think that is a good approach, or if you want to have more direct input and maybe we should create a committee to help put together content for that website. Does anybody have any thoughts? I know we're all committee to death, so I'm trying to avoid that, but at the same time, I don't want to cut you out of discussions on creating content for this website if that's something you want to be a part of.
Okay, so rather than doing a committee, do we have anybody that would be interested in input for Daryl to develop this? Very good. Okay.
So what if you, sorry, this is kind of, but what if you just gave like an outline or first stab at what you think the content would be and how it's Sorry. This is Scott. Daryl, if you just took a first stab at what you think the content would be and what the layout would be, then I think that could provide a little bit more creativity input from the rest of the group at that point, and then we could review and say, other people. There is another representative from Aurora that'll start participating in upcoming meetings, and they may be able to help out as well. Okay.
Anybody feel like burning need to create a new committee? Seeing one not. Okay. Okay, so Daryl, you'll just put the outline together for us? All right, great. Thank you. Okay. So up next, we've got the 911 fees on hotel room nights. Kimberly.
So there is a Budget Support Act proposal that is about putting a fee on hotel rooms for 911. And I know this is something that this group has thought about, discussed at a very high level. And I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention as an item that I really feel that the legislative subcommittee, and I know that that committee is incredibly taxed right now, but that we should start really taking a look at how would something like that look in Colorado? Is it possible for us to implement draft language to consider this for Colorado? It's the one area that we're missing right now. We have to build 911 infrastructure to support our tourists and our high tourist areas, and we really don't have a way to capture surcharge for that. So this concept, and Daryl, I don't recall if you included it in your packet or not, but there's a concept, and I believe this is from California, about increasing that rate for a hotel surcharge for 911, specifically for 911. So my intent is to draw your attention to it, to read it, to take a look at what's being done in another state for consideration for this group to discuss in more detail. and then put that in front of maybe even the legislative subcommittee to start to contemplate how this could fold into legislation.
So this is Daryl. It was actually Washington, D.C., and is actually a past change that they made as part of their annual citywide budget. They actually, because Washington, D.C. is both a city and a state, they they do a lot of their actual ordinances through their citywide budget. And they added a 911 and 311 fee to their hotel night, or their hotel room taxes there. So I can send that out to the group. I didn't send it out to the full task force, Kimberly, but I will do that. And while I'm doing that, I'll also check through NASNA to see if there are any other states that have hotel room based 911 charges. So I know that is something that this group has talked about before. It's been about a year and a half. But it would be one possible way to try to capture revenue from the tourist population, which does put a big, it does have a big impact on the 911 system. So.
Yeah, that would be great, Daryl, and then we can carry this over to the agenda for our next meeting.
Any questions for Kimberly? Okay, and thanks for the discussion concerning Rule 2143DB, or 5.
Just 5. So Rule 2143D is about the DESP providing its annual contingency plan. CenturyLink does this every year, no later than April 30th. And then it usually gets filed both with some confidential documents as well as non-confidential documents in a commission proceeding. One of the sub-points under D, where those points are where it lists the things that should be included in that contingency plan. One of those points is any other details deemed relevant as determined by the relevant parties or the commission. I wanted to get this group thinking about, is there anything else that would be helpful to the 911 community that they would like to see CenturyLink include in their annual contingency report? In order for you to know what additional type of information might be useful, it would be good for you to know what's in the report to begin with. So that is identification and location of all primary and backup facilities, equipment and databases, or any or all other components related to basic emergency service, identification and description of all demarcation points with BESPs, alley providers, and PSAPs, all contingency processes and information from BESPs, originating service providers, intermediary aggregation service providers, PSAPs, and governing bodies necessary for public safety operations until 911 service is restored. Contact information for designated representatives for each PSAP and or governing bodies. And you guys are probably really familiar with this because CenturyLink reaches out to you every year to get that contact information updated, as well as your contingency routing phone numbers. Any other details deemed relevant, which I just talked about. And then it just says that they will file that plan and then notify PSAPs of any changes. So I don't know that we can have a discussion today if anybody has anything they want to add to this, but I mainly wanted to get people thinking about it because if we want CenturyLink to include anything additional to that information in their annual contingency report, now is probably the time to bring it up so CenturyLink has time to put that information together before their April 30th filing. Joe?
Do PSAPs get a copy of the full report or any part of it?
The rule doesn't require it.
Because it seems to me it might be helpful if we included in there, the places where there are lack of redundancy or other issues like that, and some indication of the populations that are served by the PSAP, so, or volume of calls, so that, actually go to the other proceeding we're working, the other committee is prioritization, and that may help the commission make decisions as well.
So thinking about this, I think, and then you can chime in on this as well. I think in order for us to reasonably expect CenturyLink to provide additional information as part of this report, we probably need to put those requests in writing. I wonder if there's somebody, Joe, would you be willing to try to put that request in writing and provide it to the full task force?
I would. Is it reasonable to expect that amount of information, have that done by this year, or to focus more on next year?
And it's also, I think, possibly a related question, is that something that would be more appropriately done through the diversity working group? Maybe we just need more thought on that first.
What do you think, then?
I was just looking at the Tim again. I was just looking through the last one that we submitted, and I was thinking that we had put that diversity map in, that is in that proceeding, but I guess it's not part of this. I mean, I guess it could be attached as part of this, probably something that's fairly simple.
Well, it would probably need to be filed confidentially.
Well, and this is already filed confidentially. You all are allowed to get it through an NDA, just like you are in the diversity proceeding. So I don't see that as a problem.
I guess I was thinking, rather than just referencing the overall map, it would be for each authority where we have the contingency planning, we would also have that information just as relates to them.
Like an individual TSAP by TSAP report?
Or authority by authority report.
report.
I'd have to think about that one, I suppose.
Any other thoughts? Well, maybe people just need more time to think about this one. But I do think that if the group does want to see more added to that report, probably getting something in writing, the description of that additional ask in writing is probably key to making sure that CenturyLink can comply.
This is Tim again. I just thought that in the diversity proceeding, we have that document where it talks about which wire centers we have, maybe only a single connection back to another wire center. And I think we talked about this. We could maybe just add a column, and I think I might have this, I just don't know that I gave it to anybody, where we listed if there was a PSAP in one of those wire centers, and that maybe at least could give some basis to what Joe's talking about, is at least we understand where some of these PSAPs are located, and are they in a wire center that could get isolated.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on this topic?
Okay, lastly, in new business, we've got Sheriff Shaken protocol with Jeff Irvin.
Jeff might not have known I was putting his name on that.
Jeffrey, you still on the call?
So I'll just let everyone know, in the meeting materials, there is, it'll load, there it goes. In the meeting materials, I included an email that Jeff sent me from OnSolve, providing information about the new STIR/Shaken protocol that the FCC has encouraged the telecommunications industry to adopt. They really stretched hard to get this acronym, but STIR stands for Secure Telephone Identity Revisited. Shaken stands for Secure Handling of Asserted Information Using Tokens. But essentially, it's a new protocol that the wireless carriers are going to be using in order to help weed out spam calls. And the concern is I think from the public safety community, the main concern is how is this going to affect the emergency notification system messages going out to the public. And there is I think in order for us to even understand really what the dangers are, we need to understand how the protocol works and how they're going to be filtering calls by level of trustedness, I guess is the way to put it. They're basically going to be rating calls A, B, or C, where A is they've verified who the user is and the number, and we know this phone number is allowed. B is we know who this is, but we don't know that they're allowed to use this number, and that's where I'm afraid that a lot of ENS systems might fall into that category, because if you're using, if you've got a call going out through Code Red and it's one of Code Red's phone numbers, how does the telecommunications carrier know that, yes, you are authorized to use that phone number with your name associated to it, even though the phone number belongs to Code Red and not to you? And then C is we can't determine for sure who this is, and that'll probably be the one that most of your spam callers will fall into. And then from what I understand from reading the rest of this, the users will actually be able to decide, okay, they'll get all of the calls that are listed as A, B will be optional, and C will be blocked. So it'll be up to the callers to decide, what level of filtering they want to use on phone calls using this protocol. So I included this document, and at the bottom they have some links to some additional documentation that you can read to get more up to speed on what stir and shaken are. So I would just encourage you to take a look at that email that I included in there and to read those additional documents. Hopefully this won't have a lot of times these things come out and we worry about an impact and then the impact doesn't happen. Hopefully this is one of those, but if it does happen, there is an impact to public safety. We'll have a better understanding of what's happening if we understand how the protocol works. Does anybody have any comments?
I have a comment.
Mandy?
Thanks. So we did some testing. We also used Code Red through OnSolve for some emergency notifications and through counties that West Coast Services, and we found a huge percentage of the notifications we sent out were operator intercepts. So that's where with Code Red or other emergency notification systems, the person who picks up that phone call has to indicate that they want to receive it, that to press the number or acknowledge it before the delivery of the message. And close to 50% of all of the calls delivered were that operator intercept. I think that when we're already experiencing that with emergency notifications, over close to half of the people we're trying to reach aren't even listening to the message, this is going to add to it. And we've been working with OnSolve to change that or have it present a little differently. In addition to that, for those of you who use Code Red, you know that you don't get your own number associated with it, where we couldn't put in our 10-digit number and let it come up as a Wesco ID versus some random number that people think are already some sort of spam or some number that they don't want to answer. I think that this is going to continue to add difficulties to the 911 profession trying to get notifications out to the communities. And then my question becomes, how is that going to, any sort of iPod notification, and is it going to impact that? Which would, definitely, again, when it's presenting a number, or it has to have some sort of acceptance when you're receiving that, if you just happen to be in the area that the notification is going out on. I think that this can be difficult. I can say I'm Verizon, and starting yesterday, I started getting notifications on phone calls. This could be, what does it say, like possible spam or potential spam, and I was like, oh, great. And I kind of didn't even like it myself personally, because some of the calls, well, frankly, I got a call from my dispatch center last night, and it came at potential spam, and I was like, that's not a good thing. So, I don't know.
Because if you're getting that, and everybody else is,
Yeah.
all from the dispatch center. It's my understanding, it won't affect WEA at all, because that goes out over a totally different system, but if you're sending it out through your ENS, it definitely could. Any other comments? Does anybody else have any?
We have a comment.
This is Vicki. So, kind of to your point, one of the things that we're encountering, because we also have on solve, is they don't have control end to end on what the appearance looks like on the receiver end. So I've had citizens say, you know, if you guys would just change the numbers so that it looks obvious that who it was, and I've asked the question, and they say we don't have the choice in the matter. We don't have, because they're, I believe, leasing lines or something along those lines, when it actually gets delivered, they don't have a lot of control over the caller ID, and so I can see this becoming a huge issue with the ENS piece.
Brenda did file comments in FCC proceeding, pointing out that reverse 911 calls are robocalls that the shaken stir is intended to block, and that the commission has to address it. They can't leave it where they could be blocked.
Anybody else?
Okay. Next item is open discussion. Anyone have anything for open discussion?
Do we have our lunch presenters here yet? I don't see them in, oh,
There you are.
there you are.
Okay. If there's nothing for open discussion, we'll move on to.
No, she said wait.
Cheryl has something she'd like to. For Jill. Is Jill's birthday?
No.
There's something we could sing happy birthday. 27th?
She's canoeing happy birthday.
So wait, get everybody started. Yeah. That's what it is. Not a good fire starter.
We wait till the candles are lit.
Oh,
Try and
dear.
sing. This might be a production.
All right. We're all shy.
So smokers, yeah.
Okay, let's pretend they're lit. I'll go find the fire starter and we can sing. Let's go.
All right. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Gil. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Am I 21 yet? I'm 27? Yeah. I'll take that.
All right, so,
For lunch?
yeah, so we'll take like 10 minutes to get lunch.
Say 15.
Okay, so we'll take 15 minutes to get lunch, and then we'll start up on the lunch presentation.
Nope, it's broken.
I see dog, evidence of dog on that.
Oh, yeah. Not good.
Harley.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I was reading it correctly, so I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Like, if we're supposed to get it adopted in April, as soon as the new fee goes into effect for collection is January.
Yeah, because we have to have time to write rules about how to use the funds and all that, so.
Right, okay, I want to make sure I was reading it correctly, because I, wasn't.
Yep.
Carol, did you read? I have a lighter now.
You know,
I said that 7:30.
No? You want to have it blot out anyway?
Did it go to Dan? That had a PowerPoint attached to it.
that on, let me try, yeah.
Something like that.
You guys don't know.
Here it is.
Right.
Yeah, we have to.
Okay, so there are graphics, am I gonna be able to control that from your laptop, or?
Either I can do it or you can do it, but what I'll do here is,
Driving? No, you're okay. Yeah, if you don't mind me driving.
Okay, if you decide you want to, then I'll just give it back, okay?
It's gonna be. Oh, that's a good idea, so Sarah can drive while I speak.
okay.
That might work as well.
Add a column that ties that to that column. That way, sorting. Filter on, filter on. Why, well, yeah, I should read that
Oh. It's just the way Code Red works. That's the same thing that Vicki was saying. It's the way that specific vendor works. They can't, they don't have control of what number is being presented when we send out the, like, reverse 911, the emergency notifications, so people don't listen to them. Or they don't even pick them up.
Yeah, they think it's a spam.
They think it's a spam call. And it looks like one, and it presents like one. And even when you pick it up, there's like a little bit of a delay, and, yeah.
Andy,
Code Red or Everbridge? Yeah, Code Red. Yeah, Jeremy was saying they don't have that issue with.
You can put in caller ID, so ours is, Chaffey County 911 for our caller ID.
And it would be helpful. I know.
I was gonna tell you that yesterday, we had the city.
You ready to light this?
Yeah.
To do our, city decided to go with Everbridge, which is fine. We did a test, push for like internal employee notifications. Sat in a room, got 15 minutes on the test, and watched, that you pushed it to see, because we gave options. And, so we think as a doctor, there was something that was throttling their ability to receive.
Well, we, for internal stuff, are moving more and more to ReadyOps. And ReadyOps is getting ready to present, a true ENS ability. So, I don't know, it might be.
Oh, yours not.
Yeah, so it's not for public notifications at this point, but it's an internal notification. Then it's pretty robust. You can turn yourself on into radio. Okay, so we use that. Well, that's not true. Agencies that we provide services for are really big into using it and kind of pushing it to do it. And I've been a little reluctant, not because I dislike the system, but because it's one more thing that
Oh my God,
to do.
exactly what I said to you, like, I don't want to do this.
Exactly, so, but as we continue to have That's with the red.
Yeah.
We can enter another 3-year contract regionally with it.
Right. Telephone, email, all of this. We're not gonna have a choice.
And ask people to, provide the reporting right.
And we'll use it for
Yeah.
Right? That's always the best thing. That's real.
When I was,
Yeah.
when I was in the Fed, or working for the Feds, oh.
I was going back to
Federal office.
Yeah.
And she sent a singing representative.
Oh my goodness. But, wow, I'm surprised they listened in.
Shocking.
Oh my gosh, wow. Yeah, well, I can imagine that you're pretty wild.
Oh, dear.
No, thank you. Watching my diet.
Oh, yeah.
I had two of my commissioners RSVP to be here.
It was interesting listening to the funding ideas that they all had at that fire commission meeting. It's interesting, some of the they,
Yeah, we'd get some,
Madison's actually considered that for, 911 in the past.
but it was funny because one of the, they were very vocal. Colorado is one of the, like the third fastest growing, insurance premium state in the US.
There's no path forward that somebody isn't on the screen.
Oh, no, sure.
That's the problem.
Well, you know, my favorite argument to them. Yeah. Because.
Right?
Better coverage. And you're asking that different.
And it applies to all the insurance carriers.
Right, right.
Why would
Everybody
why would they
suffers.
care? Because it doesn't benefit one provider over another.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the moderator was like.
We need to be prepared to give me an alternate idea on how it can be done.
Exactly.
He wants to set up a meeting with Mike Willis. He was on TV, last week sometime.
Oh.
And he said they're what? I didn't get that, Joe. Three classes? 10? And what, Cheryl? I'm not getting that.
Yeah, no kidding.
10 counties? She said 10 counties do not have an emergency plan. Was it a plan or, yeah?
Yep.
None at all, yeah. So I'm thinking, if you can have a meeting, what, you and Daryl and Mike Willis? And what, Cheryl? Is what? Any statements? In December, is what? Talk? Can you talk to him about starting? Starting of what, Cheryl? A 911?
Yeah, I'd be happy to have a meeting with you.
Get out of the way.
Yeah. What's gonna stand there, you wanna just eat between them while they present? So I did have to convert this because I'm on my phone book. So I had to convert it to phone, so there might be a few, I haven't looked through it all, but there might have some practice that are lost.
Is there another meeting?
Yes.
We're GIS and public safety people.
Right. There you go.
We do our best.
My surface decided to die today, so I get my Chromebook.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, my Surface gives me trouble, which is why I really have embraced OneDrive. Because it's like, I realize I have everything sitting
So
on it.
disappointed in this expensive device. It doesn't work. Whereas my Chromebook always works, it's limited.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody.
Hello, oh, there we go. Hello, everybody. I think, everyone's got their lunch now, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna let our presenters, introduce themselves, but I did wanna say that we had a presentation on GIS at the last meeting, but I wanted to also get a different perspective. It's a very diverse industry, and, while I am going to let Sandra, introduce herself, I do want to say that I've had the pleasure of working with Sandra on DASNA for a number of years. She's the State 911 Administrator here in Arizona. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and hope we can all give Sandra and Sarah our undivided attention. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, and so just so you know, Daryl just informed us he took our PowerPoint and he moved it onto the Chromebook, so some of it might be skewed. So if I wasn't nervous enough already, PowerPoint might really help push me over the edge, right? So, my name is Sandy Dyer. I thank you so much for inviting us to come talk with you today, and I really hope that you find the content informative, although I am going to point out a little bit awkward as we go through it, given today's conversation. So with Datamark, I joined Datamark, oh gosh, next year will be a month, or next month will be a year ago. Thank you, I told you I was nervous. So it'll be about a year since I've joined Datamark. The title they give me is Public Safety Subject Matter Expert, so this is proof to you that they'll give that title to anyone, okay? But that is what I am. I'm a Public Safety Subject Matter Expert. So as Daryl mentioned, my previous role to Datamark was with the State of Arizona 911 Program Office. I was a backup state administrator. Barbara Yeager was the state administrator, was more essentially a project manager. In my role as project manager, and I was with the state 911 office since 2010, with everything 911. Everything. Network, equipment, GIS, wireless, wireline, you name it, that's what we did, right? If we were a 4-person shop, it was way too much for 4 people. But that's what we did for the state of Arizona. And we did successfully, the day before I left, ironically, the state of Arizona, we were able to turn up our first PSAP on a geospatial call routing solution on an NG91 network. So Arizona is for 10 counties. We have, and I still say we. You can't be 30 years in the 911 industry and give we up that easily. But there are 10 of the 15 counties in one tribal nation that are on a next generation 911 solution. Is it a full end-to-end solution? No, but I'll challenge any state that says they have a full end-to-end solution. I'm just going to say that now. But it is. It does have the Ethernet. It's a hosted call handling solution, and we do have the next generation core services solution. And Arizona has done a lot of work towards GIS, and I want to share some of those experiences today if you're okay with that. I'm going to let Sarah introduce herself first.
Hi, I'm Sarah Rollins, and I am fundamentally a GIS geek. I've been in GIS since the early 90s, and most recently, I've done GIS in all sorts of different industries and verticals. Most recently, I was with Intrado/West as a GIS analyst, so I'm bringing public safety into my GIS realm, and I joined Datamark, coming up on almost 3 months now. My title is Public Safety GIS Expert, again, handing out titles. And so we're here kind of tag teaming with the PSAP side and the GIS side to bring all of you information about where we're headed with Next Gen. And I'm primarily going to be driving the PowerPoint, but filling in GIS content for everyone.
So I'm going to make the basic assumption that all your PSAPs are using GIS, right? You're either using it from a 911 call map or mapped alley, whatever you want to call it, your CAD map, automatic vehicle location, whatever the case may be. Now, if you've been following into 911 long enough, you realize that the role that GIS plays in the new environment is vastly different. It is very different. Now, the GIS you use today in the PSAP may be the GIS that you're going to use from your NG91 core service solution perspective, but it may not, because what we've been using GIS for in our PSAP is not necessarily the GIS we need to actually support location validation call routing. That's part of what we're going to cover today, a little bit, right? Because anyone who knows me knows that I love storytelling, and I love soapboxes. I figured the soapbox are better, and so I'm gonna really try to rein that in today, so I can keep you within this 30 minutes. So I am gonna mention that a little bit, but more from a risk perspective, okay? Because we have a greater risk in the new environment when it comes to next generation 911. Now, when I talk about next generation 911, because of the rules that I performed, I mean, folks, you see it. April of 1990, I started as a public safety dispatcher, right? I know I look good for my age, right? But almost 30 years ago, I was a public safety dispatcher, did that for about 12 years. And I've had the benefit of growing up in 911. Every wonderful aspect of it and every failure that comes with it. Next generation 911, I am so excited about because I see in this solution an ability for us to get away from all of the problems that we've had in the past. So I'm so glad, one, that Colorado's taken the initiative that they have, but that you're also now considering your GIS. The reason that I say that is this past year of going across the nation has really kind of opened my eyes. Most communities, when they think of next generation 911, they think of an EZNet and they think of their call handling solution. Rightfully so, right? That's what we're used to. Historically in 911, we're dealing with our network, which is an old voice analog network that we have to replace with a voice data network. And not just any voice data network, it needs to be an I3, an ENA I3 compliant voice data network. And why are we having to do this? Folks, our millennials of today communicate beyond voice. The current 911 network does only voice. We have to now adopt a network that's going to be able to handle voice, because we still have to handle voice, but you also have to be able to handle all those new ways of communicating. Text, right? There's text, there's real-time text, picture, video, social media, help me out, automatic crash notification, all these ways that we can be gaining information from 911, we now have to have a network that can support. And as well, from a call handling solution, we need equipment that can not only take those communications, but be able to communicate that, right? So as these new services start to come to us, because that's what they are, services that will ride on our network, we have to have the equipment to do it. The third leg of like the NG911 stool is how we validate the location of the caller and how we route that 911 call. And that's the NG core services. That's where the GIS is going to play a role. Now, for most communities, GIS and the NG911 solution to that is always an afterthought because they focus on the EZNet, they focus on the call handling solution. And I know this is going to sound weird, folks, but those are almost the easy parts of the next generation 911. They're the easy parts because they're technology driven. The standards exist, the technology is built for those standards, you figure out what you want, you find people to come and bring them into you. The GIS is more complicated. Not because there's not technology that comes with it. The complication comes because you have to actually build the data, and you have to build the relationships that are necessary to get that accomplished. So in the GIS spectrum, it's not a technology problem. It is a relationship problem. And it's the relationships that are actually going to take you the longest. Yeah, go ahead. So let me give you some perspective. So in 2012, when Arizona kind of said, okay, we're committed to this NG911 idea, and we're going to go ahead and move forward. Because I was so heavily involved in GIS, I said, okay, well, we need to start the GIS discussion now. So remember how I said that right before I left last year, we were able to turn up our first PSAP on geospatial call routing. This is with a highly sophisticated GIS group who's still, starting in 2012, with us moving towards our GIS goals for NG911 7 years later. And out of 10 counties, only the second county is now transitioning. And it's not because of a lack of knowledge, it's not because of a lack of GIS, but it's a lack of having the GIS where it needs to be NG911 ready. Okay, so when Daryl and I were talking about what to talk about today, he pointed out, and part of what we discussed today is you have a new funding bill. And this new funding bill is gonna get approved in April. I'm just gonna remain positive about it, right?
Really?
The new funding bill is gonna get approved in April.
Breaking news.
There you go. Oh, so thank you for saying that, because while, so I am not I do not believe one size fits all. So when I speak to a community, I research your community. But research only goes so far. So if there's anything that I say today that is not correct, please stop and ask me. Or please clarify, because I don't want misleading information out there. But when I was reading your draft legislation, and I was thinking about these questions that were posed to us, what should Colorado GIS people do to make their data engine I-1 ready? How can we collect, normalize, and maintain it from a, I'm assuming this is a statewide question. And how can the I-1 task force and GIS folks hit the ground running when the funding comes through? I was thinking about this one. Because the way the legislation is written, when we get approved in April, there are mechanisms that are going to have to get put in place to actually start those collections. So if you're lucky, and even if I remember the way the bill is written, collection wouldn't start till January 1st, 2021. Which means any funding that might be available to support your projects are really a good 12 to 18 months after that initial collection, right? So when I was thinking about Colorado, I was thinking, well, so what can you do between now and when that funding becomes available, right? Let's not wait 12 to 18 months, because how far are you getting on your ESINet? When are all PTAPs going to be migrated?
February next year.
There you go, right? So we don't want to wait till February next year to have this GIS discussion. So what can you do between now and then with no money? Welcome to Arizona. All Arizona is what can we do with no money? I am a very big proponent of thinking within the box. I'm not about what are those out-of-the-box ideas. Has anyone ever heard the term thinking within the box? Oh, you haven't? Oh, so University of Arizona does this really great, and I was lucky enough to attend this leadership academy for government employees. And one of the sessions was about within the box. And within the box means, folks, out of the box meant I don't have my solutions here, so I got to go think outside of myself. But really for the most part, if I sit and think about what I have available in front of me, I could probably figure out how to get it done. So I want to do some within the box thinking for you. Admittedly, this is going to be kind of awkward given today's discussion. So what are we going to do? Is it not working again? Oh, so while she's trying to make that happen, there were a couple things that came up in the meeting today, and I don't mean to overstep my invitation, but there were a couple things I wanted to mention to you. One, with Cheryl's conversation. So I co-chair the NINA Real-Time Text Working Group. Real-time text is going to provide availability for the deaf and hard of hearing, the speech impaired communities to be able to communicate with your PSAC. We are working through comments, and that document on real-time text, hopefully in 2020 will come out as final. Does anybody plan to attend the NINA Standards of Best Practice Conference at US? So if you do plan to attend, we are presenting on real-time text, but we're presenting this time with the NINA Education Group, and because it's going to be focused on PSAP training and education for real-time text. So please consider attending that session. And I know I'm meeting my 30 minutes. I will get back on task.
Question? What? What? Never mind.
Okay, so the other thing I want to mention is your standards documents and whether or not best practices or information documents should be included. So I also co-chair the GIS data stewardship for Engine 911 for the PSAP boundaries and for road center line. I'm also a working group member for emergency service boundaries. Those may be ones that you want to consider. PSAP boundaries should be coming out final in the next couple months. The other two working groups are active. If you are considering starting your GIS initiatives for NG 911, I would make these documents available because they're going to help educate your GIS professionals on how to complete SAW 006, which is the GIS data model. So the data model is the standard, says, hey, this is the standard. These documents are saying, how do I fulfill those requirements in the standard? Okay? So real quick. So we put together a small roadmap for Colorado specifically as far as your GIS adventure. And, so this is the awkwardness. Former GIS committee. Hear me out, please, because I know you guys are committed out. I heard that today, but hear me out on this one. So we're going to go through these steps. So what we're recommending is, again, you can do this without funding. We did this in Arizona without funding, okay? So I'm not proposing something to you that hasn't been done before. I'm proposing to you what's already been done and what's proven and works. When, in 2012, like I said, when we decided we were going down the NG 911 path, we formed our GIS committee. It's a 911 GIS committee. It's under the Arizona Geographic Information Council. We put it there because we felt we had more access to GIS community under that governor-appointed council. I don't remember if Colorado has one. This committee is 8 years strong now. I still co-chair this committee. Not only are we 8 years strong, we built a document for Arizona NG 911 GIS guidelines and best practices. Because working for a state, we are not allowed to create policy. So guidelines and best practices to educate GIS folks on the needs of public safety in NG 911 and how to fulfill NG 911 requirements. We're in our third revision of that. We have a dispatcher education working group. Dispatcher education working group has created a story map to teach our DSAT personnel what GIS is, how they use it today, and how it will be used tomorrow to educate them. Because, folks, I'm sorry, it's a new way of doing business. Our DSAT personnel are going to have to understand this new way of doing business. We also have, for the past 6 years, at the annual GIS conference, we have a 911 track every year. The most important thing that came out of our GIS committee, though, was the community that came out of it. The community. Our GIS people are no longer siloed in their counties or their cities. They now not only know their neighbor, they know they have a full community they can turn to for assistance in trying to figure out this NG 911 GIS. Oh, I'm sorry, guys, sir. Did you want to go through the other? No, we'll go ahead and start. Right. So I told you I like soapboxes. Now, when I say a GIS committee, you're going to say, okay, well, Sandy, in Colorado, we have GIS committees all over the place. We get what GIS is. I'm proposing a different type of GIS committee. Nina, as part of NG 911, has identified 3 key roles to supporting GIS. The first being the 911 authority. So all y'all who have always performed these roles will continue to perform a role that's vital to GIS and NG 911. About the only change that happened to the definition of a 911 authority for Nina was adding the fact that you are now responsible for the provisioning the data, the GIS data, to the SI, which then, of course, provisions into the individual services, right? So your title is changing to data provisioner. The second role that they've identified as key to NG 911 is the addressing authority. We've always had addressing authority. We might have talked to them every once in a while, but for NG 911, they've been identified as a key role. And then lastly is our GIS data providers. Now, you all said you have GIS, and you probably have a GIS data provider of some type. Those folks not only should be engaged, but need to be educated and further engaged about how the GIS needs to transform to properly support location validation and call routing, okay? Not dispatching of emergency units, which is how we use it today, but actual location validation and call routing. So the GIS committee that I'm recommending has these 3 roles, but then also has this level of support. So you should have GIS people and public safety people and addressing authorities from a city level, a county level, regional, tribal, state, federal. As part of our 911 committee in Arizona, we have private vendors because as part of the governor's appointed council is a public-private council. You get a lot of really great guidance from your vendors because they go across the nation and they run into folks like you and learn different ways of doing business. So by considering the 3 roles that the GIS committee should have, 911 authorities, GIS providers, and addressing authorities, and these varying levels, it's a little bit different of a committee than we would historically see. Sorry, go ahead now. Now, we already know that you do this well because you already have, under the advisory task force, all of these committees, as we talked about today, right? Oops, most of this is going to be awkward. Go ahead there. So then what we're recommending is that you add, I know, but it doesn't have to be under the 911 advisory task force. I mean, folks, I did my research. There really wasn't as broad of an, oversight group as this one. So even though the state of Colorado, through the chief data officer, they have their data portal, they have, what is it, the Governor's Data Advisory Board. You really seem to focus on state issues and state concerns. And Colorado's a lot like Arizona. You're a bottom-up solution, right? In Arizona, even though we had a state 911 office, everything happened at the local level. So every decision I ever had to make was, how do I take this bottom-up scenario? It was never, what am I going to do from here and push down? So whether or not it's here or somewhere else, would like to encourage you to build that GIS committee. And then the first thing, hey, how about schedule a meeting, right? Now, folks, you're going to go into this and you're not even going to be quite sure how or what you should tackle as part of this committee. The first step, and you know this, if anything challenging, is to start the conversation, which you're already doing. Figure out who our stakeholders are, and let's set a meeting. The community we created with our GIS committee in Arizona, our 911 committee, was not just a community from, hey, I know who to call, but was the buy-in. Because when I formed the committee, I was very clear. Folks, I'm from the state 911 office. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to bring the education, the standards, which frankly, back in 2012, Nina was still trying to figure all that out. 7 years to do data model, right? So I'm here to bring the education. I'm here to bring the standards. I'm here to knock down any roadblocks you may run into. I'm just here to coordinate you. What do we want NG911 and GIS in Arizona to look like? And from that, we got buy-in. Because it wasn't me telling them what to do. It was us working as a community to figure out what that was for us. Now, to go back to education, when you form your committee, you don't have to be the most knowledgeable because there are tons of resources out there. Nina, APCO, webinars. We built a workshop. It's a 4-hour workshop, specifically that for bringing together the public safety and GIS providers to explain what each industry does and why they need to be working together for NG911. And it even goes into how we do 911 today and what we're looking to have the GIS replace tomorrow, right? So you have workshops like that. The Colorado 911 Resource Center, you know, has tons of training opportunities for you to go and gain as well. But please research. There's tons of education out there. And don't just educate yourself on next generation 911 and the GIS that's going to support it, but educate yourself on each other. So remember how I said you can actually start your GIS initiative now without really spending any money, without having a funding source. This part of the education is going to help you to figure out what resources you already have, what consistencies you may already have. So what, the state of Colorado has their data repository, right? And they have a huge data sharing initiative. So Arizona, we have the same thing. We have the Arizona Geospatial Clearinghouse. So we utilize that platform for our data collection and our data sharing for our 911 public safety folks. We sit partitioned off. You have to ask permission to join the group. I have to verify that the 911 community wants you a part of that group. It allows you to safely put your data up, and the only way the public knows that your data's out there is if that county or city actually says, make this publicly viewable, right? So we sit neatly behind that. It doesn't mean, so if you were to go to the state of Colorado, they might say, well, yeah, we have room for you to support this. We have a platform that can support your data collection and your data sharing efforts as you move forward with the next generation 911. Arizona's not the only one. Utah works closely with their state GIS, which is AGRC. Oklahoma works with their state GIO office. I'm trying to think of another one to help out. Oh, well, sorry, that's the only ones that come to mind. But when I say educate yourselves on each other as well, and figure out what your resources may be locally to help support your initiatives. Now, once you have your GIS community together, and you have an idea of what that's going to look like, you really need a current state assessment. It's really hard to tell where you need to be and what you need to do for NG 911 if you don't know where you're at today. So when we started, yeah, stuff's coming in where
Here's the fragments up there.
yeah, some little fragments. So the first thing we did when we started our GIS committee is I collected data throughout the state. Now, Arizona's has had GIS as part of 911 for decades. Long time, because we had to support wireless and everything else. And we had GIS accuracy requirements. Every year, folks had to meet 98% or better accuracy as far as their ALI to GIS comparison. And that was to obtain funding, right? So we had these requirements, and doing it a long time, I felt really good about it, because even the state 911 office put money forward to even build your GIS, right? So we should be good. So I collected all the data. We have 17 911 systems, it's a budgetary term. And guess what? I had 17 different ways of doing business. Even with the oversight of the state 911 office, no one's data set matched as far as the data they were collecting, how it was being collected, none of it. And there's a long story behind that. A lot of it has to do with Nina, so I'll let it go. Now, so in collecting that data, and seeing that I had 17 different ways of doing business, I also noticed that not everybody had the same GIS available to them. I even had counties that didn't have any GIS. They didn't have anything to contribute, for the most part, right? So what this told me was, first off, and this goes back to not just how we're going to approach this from a GIS perspective, but also how am I going to, it also actually lended into how we developed our NG 911 solution as a whole. Is when I know that I have 17 different ways of doing business, and I know that these 17 different ways of doing business are not just supporting 911. It's supporting their public works department, it's supporting, the PSAP map, the fire map, the police map, public works, DOTs, every department within a city or a county. In me coming in from a state and saying, guess what? You have to change everything you have to do for this single business need, was never going to work. It wasn't going to work. They were going to fight me tooth and nail about it. Not only fight me tooth and nail, but I didn't have what would be the ripple effect locally on software, other software and processes applications. And our 911 funding didn't go as far as that, right, to even try to supplement that. And we didn't have the money, right? 20 cents per line per month. There's just no money. Yeah, I know. I saw your 50 cents. I was jealous. I was like, wow, what have I done with 50 cents? So that turned out. So then when we did move towards an NG 911 solution, and we were working with the providers as to what we wanted it to look like, I said, your NG Core Services solution, it has to be able to take all the puzzle pieces together to form a map, a big picture of one large map. Arizona's not approaching this with a statewide map, and we're going to do one map and we're going to dump it in. We have to be able to piecemeal every local data set and seamlessly aggregate it to provide statewide location validation routing, right? So that actually impacted how we decided to build our AG Core Services and who we selected. Now, so You can, again, with no money, do a data request from everyone that's, and I know you have 84 primary PSAPs, so potentially 84 GIS data sources, and that's not counting the state or federal resources kind of thing, but hear me out. You can do an assessment of your own. You can make the same request. You can take a look at it. You can check it for a level of completeness. So go ahead, Sarah. Like, does everyone have road center lines? Does everyone have average points? Does everybody have, did you guys have emergency service zone layers in your mapping? Everybody or somebody? Do you know what an emergency service zone layer is? Okay, all right, I'm just making sure. In part of this assessment, you're even going to determine where data sets are missing. So not only are you going to be able to say, okay, well, do I need a solution that's more like putting the pieces of a puzzle together in order to support what we're doing? Because we have so many different ways of doing business. But you're also right away going to know whether or not you're missing data layers in any community, and that tells you that data creation needs to happen. Right from a simple collecting the data and taking a look at it from a GIS community point of view. The GIS community folks is going to do the heavy lifting on this, not you, right? You're going to tap into their expertise to do this. Now, realistically, if you need help, yes, right? There are folks that are willing to help you do this, but I think you could do this without any real funding stream with the right people that are motivated to be involved. Now, so let's talk about the required data layers. And I know that, so Daryl had said, don't talk about MENA standards, we already got all that. So bear with me, please. The only thing I want to point out about the data layers, that is so weird. So these are the required data layers for NG 911. PSAP boundaries, road center lines, emergency service boundaries, address points, and the provisioning boundary. I'm going to tell you now, when you collect the data, no one will have a provisioning boundary. Why? You don't have a reason for it. Do you know what the provisioning boundary does in NG 911? So basically with the provisioning, do I have any impact coordinators in the room? No? Sure, why not? Okay, well then I won't use that analogy if
We do have some on the phone, though.
You do have some on the phone. So I was an impact coordinator. As an impact coordinator, you have an impact community that you're allowed to edit data in. You can view, like I viewed the other counties around me because I wanted to make sure if I made a change on my end, it didn't impact the impact ranges in other counties, but I couldn't edit their data. I could only edit the data that was assigned to my impact community. That's what the provisioning boundary is. The provisioning boundary is a geofence around your data that says, that will tell you, you can edit that because it sits within your provisioning boundary. But the moment you put data in or try to edit data that sits outside of that provisioning boundary, it says, nope, you don't have permission for that. That's what your provisioning boundary does. So I can guarantee nobody has this. So you already know from a committee perspective that's going to have to get built. PSAP boundaries, you might have that if you currently have an emergency service zone layer and it has the 4 key elements that you to track, being PSAP, law, fire, and EMS. You have a starting point for PSAP boundary and your emergency service boundaries. The starting point, because you remember a lot of our ESCs, just be frank, folks, Legacy 911, we abused it. We made the ESN do way more than it was ever supposed to do. Why? Because it was the only, for a long time for some of us, the only automated database we had. So the INSAG and the ESN database really was ever intended to route the call to the appropriate PSAP and to identify law, fire, and EMS. What we've done over the years is route to the PSAP, but I'm going to put in not just the law enforcement, but the beat, or the fire response boundary, or whatever the case may be, when that's really not what it was ever intended to do. And having that type of granularity can be problematic in an NG911 environment. So when I say it's a starting point, you're going to have to evaluate whether or not how you're currently using your GIS is really applicable to what you need in the future. So you may not already have that. Most will already have address points as well. right? So, are the address points or the road center lines the quality that you need for next generation 911? Who knows? We're not evaluating that yet. We're just trying to figure out what we have. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, from a data quality point of view, you probably are going to need some help with this. This is a more resource-intensive approach, resource and time-intensive. Try to figure out the availability, the completeness, the accuracy, the provision, or the precision of your data. It's going to take a little bit more effort and may need to wait till your funding becomes available. And the reason I say it is, can this type of data quality, on every level the data quality within a GIS occurs, happen in a classic GIS environment? Can. Really complicated. And there are software solutions out there that not only does this level of data quality with next generation 911 in mind to make sure that it's complete, but it also does it more comprehensively. Meaning it's not just looking at my road centerline layer, it's saying, hey, your road centerline layer says this, but all your other layers are now in conflict. And to do that in a classic GIS environment is very resource intensive and would take a level of sophistication to build a proper scripting. So that, you may want to wait on that. And then honestly, folks, make a plan. So your GIS committee is just going to make a plan at this point, right? You're just going to say, okay, I've formed the group that I'm going to trust to get us there. I'm going to help provide guidance to the group through standards and education and such. We're going to work together as a community to do this, because I'm going to be honest with you, when folks try to tackle NG911 on their own without consideration of how it's getting deployed statewide, we unwillingly and unknowingly put ourselves in the same problem that we're in today. I don't know if, I remember, and some of you may have been on this call, so a good 10 years ago, Brian Rosen had done a call on Next Generation 911, and how great it was going to be, and how we were going to get medical information that came directly with the 911 call. And the whole time he's talking about how great NG911 is, the only thing I kept thinking to myself was, I just want to be able to transfer Allie over telco batteries. Can I just have the basics, right? Can I just have what I really need to support my 911 call? If everyone's tackling NG911 on their own, we can unknowingly be putting those islands back in because the connectivity is not there to get those transfers to happen. And then to come in later and get the connectivity there could end up costing a lot more money than trying to handle this more holistically. So make a plan. That would be the next step, I guess, I would have your GIS committee do. We're going to form, we're going to do an assessment, and we're going to make a plan. This plan can help educate your RFQ when your funding comes out. I can't tell you how many RFPs that I have seen that are like folks just threw darts at a wall trying to figure out what they really needed. And then they're spending money on things that they didn't really need. So this small little assessment with very little resources and money can better position you that when you actually go ask for help, you know exactly what you need to ask for. Sorry, go ahead. Now, let's talk about mitigating risk, because this is a huge thing for me, is mitigating risk. The risk in NG911, from a GIS perspective, is so much bigger than what it is today. Now, and why is that? When we use GIS today, the 911 is already delivered to the 911 center. It pops up on your map. Your dispatcher looks at it. And they look at it to try to gain better location information, listen to the caller, to get my emergency responders, figure out if I should transfer the call. In Next Generation 911, your GIS is no longer building a map that the dispatcher is looking at. It is actually building an emergency call routing network, a machine-to-machine interface. There is no human going, I don't think that looks right. I think something else needs to happen, right? It has to be at a new level of accuracy. You've never had our GIS data be before? Now, this scares a lot of GIS folks, because in today's environment, the way they normally do GIS, there's no risk. They even get to put a disclaimer on everything they put out, right? The reality is, once they use GIS in emergency call routing network, there's no way that you're going to dial 911. A disclaimer is going to pop up and say, use this data at your own risk, right? So how do we mitigate that risk? How do we build that disclaimer within this emergency call routing network? And we do that by having the proper governance, agreements, workflows, processes in place to help protect us, right? Protect us as 911 authorities and protect them as GIS providers. Because the reality is your INSAG and your INSAG coordinators and all that role is getting replaced by GIS providers, right? And the GIS data. And in today's environment, where we have the 911 system service provider, CenturyLink, hires West, who manages the ALI database and the INSAG database. We get to manage all the data. We just insert it into their functional elements, right? So it's coming a little bit this way. Go ahead, ma'am. Does that work now? It's broken?
Question?
Yes.
Is there any opportunity to include the whole community for input?
You know, that's really going to be at the discretion of the GIS committee, to be honest with you. It's not a bad idea. I think that the committee itself needs to get to a point where they understand what their goal is and what their path is before they can take it out to the public. The only reason that, the only red flag I have about the public coming in too early is that the intent of what we need to do can get skewed by other endeavors, right? So I think there is an element for that. I just think too early on could derail things in a way that you wouldn't want it to. Yeah.
You said the problem there, if you have everything in place, and no one asked a person with a disability, for example, and that person might say, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. As an example, I asked for an accommodation at this one place, and they never included me in what my needs might be. They bought something to safely take me down the stairs. And when she saw it and tried it out, she said no. It was not adequate for her needs. Or Luke? Ask Luke what he might need. Sometimes, yeah.
So I think I completely understand what you're saying. The kind of GIS data we're dealing with to validate the location of the call and to route the 911 call is way more rudimentary than that. Way more rudimentary. It's basic. Do I know what the address is? Can I locate the address? If my address point doesn't have the address, will my road center line locate that address? Is it routing to the right 911 center? It's very basic. But to be honest with you, Cheryl, no one's asked me that question. So I want to think about it, to be frank. And so the co-chair that I work with is Tony Dunn, and she is also a part of the accessibility committee for NINA, and I would like to have this discussion with her. Could I be afforded that time to inquire? And then I'll respond back through Daryl, if that's appropriate. Okay. To be honest, no one's asked me the question, so my first response is, well, really kind of more basic than that, but I don't know what I don't know either, right? So let me ask. Because I also work closely with Richard Ray, who is also part of the accessibility committee, and he's part of the deaf and hard of hearing community. So, okay, thank you. Okay, so I was really kind of excited when I had read the new draft legislation because it looked like under immunity of providers, you had put a new paragraph into health, and I'm sure this is because of NG 911. NG 911 now requires a lot more extensive dialogue and legislation as far as immunity and how we protect, because the reality is, and I actually hate the term NG 911 because at some point, folks, it's just going to be 911. It's just how we're doing business, right? So I actually hate the term. But there are, and even in your legislation where it's saying you had this wording about 911 access points or connectivity to it. And I love that language because every time we write legislation, we write wireline, wireless, voice over IP, and we never consider what that future connection is going to look like. And then the first thing that happens is the providers come to us and go, well, your legislation doesn't apply to us, so we don't have to pay your tax, your fee, or do whatever remittance. So I'm happy to see that as well. If I interpreted that new paragraph correctly, then at least through a governance and legislative point of view, your GIS people are helping to mitigate that risk, right? Because remember, that's the new database of the future. So you've already kind of done that. But I want to also encourage that, folks, we've done this for a long time, a lot of our response boundaries and who we send and who's the proper responder has been a handshake agreement for years. We really maybe need to firm that up. We actually need to define the workflows, and people need to know where they fit in that workflow. So here's a really good example. Arizona, 98% of better accuracy, alley to GIS, and that's comparing road center line and address points. We, for years, all of our communities have hit 98 or better on road center line. Address points is a new requirement. The new requirement was so I could gauge where folks would need help, right? Are we seeing improvement? Are we not? That kind of thing. Now, I had one of my communities call me and say, oh my gosh, Sandra, we dropped to 80%. We dropped to 80%. And I went, first of all, this phone call never happened. How are you right now? I don't want to know that you dropped to 80%. I said, but that tells me there was a breakdown of workflow. And the breakdown in workflow is that GIS went in, made a bunch of changes, but never communicated to the impact coordinator what these changes were. So now the alley database no longer matched the GIS. And knowing that your GIS actually has to do this in the future, you need to understand every person in your workflow, what that workflow looks like. So when that person falls off, we can help mitigate risk, right? So those types of things when we're talking about mitigating risk. And then, of course, it's staying on top of standards in education. Education is going to be a constant through this because we're on going into version 3 of I3, right? It's going to be ever-flowing at this point. Go ahead. Yeah, let's go to, because I know I'm running out of time, if I haven't already gone over, and I do apologize. So, folks, the reality is I really truly believe through a GIS committee that you can successfully get enough of a picture of what you're facing as to what you need for NG 911 readiness from a GIS perspective. You're going to be able to build a community that has buy-in to what you need from a GIS, public safety, NG 911 perspective. And then part of the glory of all that is that now, instead of 911 paying for everything, you've brought in partners where cost sharing can happen. The reality is the GIS that you're building is going to be building off of something they're already maintaining. So when you're going into it, it's not, I have to pay for everything to build that, because I'm not building it for a single business need. I just need you, I'll pay for the portion where you support us in this. Because it's not about getting federal funding and getting a whole bunch of data sets built. It is about what is my long-term sustainability of what will become my network in the future, right? And having all the right collaboration involved to be able to make that happen. So you must puzzle pieces. Right? I do apologize if I went over, but this is what I thought when I looked at where Colorado was. Your funding that's going to get approved, I'm just going to keep positive thoughts coming to you, or even if it doesn't, the fact that you're having a conversation about GIS now is a good thing. But this is not the heavy lift you have to do with this committee. They just need you to organize it. Your GIS actually have the heavy lift in all this, right? And through this process, I think you're going to be able to gain enough knowledge that when funding becomes available, you could build the right RFP. You're not throwing money away on things that you just don't need. And you're going to know when you need to bring in help, because this is just way too resource intensive for what we have available to us. The majority of Arizona GIS for 911, I didn't pay for. Partnerships paid for it. Department of Transportation gave me money to complete our centerline files so they can meet their federal requirements for Arnold. Broadband gave me money to build address points because they had to have a complete data set. We now in Arizona have complete statewide address points, centerlines, parcels. I have Department of Revenue doesn't give Arizona money, but every time we go in and we build our service boundaries, because handshake agreements need them skewed. So we rebuilt them from legals. They would go to the basement and pull every annexation, every incorporation, and share all those documents with us. So we always had a complete picture. We built that. It became the new authoritative data set. Turn it back to the community, and the state got updated with the work we did, right? So through collaboration, and we did collaboration with the CO, because this is Colorado's collaboration, I think you guys can get this done. Now, if you want help, you can call me, but I really think you have a path to getting it done on your own. Is there any questions for me at all? I know it's a dry topic, especially if you don't do GIS. Yes, sir.
So the committee that you initiated in Arizona and still co-chair, how much of their material is available online that we can crib from?
Yeah.
Actually, so the document, guidelines of best practices document is out there publicly available, both on the AZ91 website and on the ACGO website. Okay. We are going through some updates. This is the third revision to it, and in it also has our ALI, the GIS testing procedures.
Okay.
Okay, but it does have that in there, right? So you don't even have to reinvent the wheel on that. If you wanted to start at least an ALI accuracy testing, now, and I don't know financially if that's an impact for you. In Arizona, we get our communities, our insect communities, get a free ALI dump every year. You may have to pay for yours, right? I don't know. I mean, so that might be a financial impact. So every state's different. Very different. So, of course, based on that free one, we only require the accuracy testing once a year. But it does give you the gauge. The 98% comes from NENA 71501, where it's ranked 98%. Now, let me offer you this about the 98%. When we actually turned up to a geospatial Colorado solution, I kind of had an epiphany. That 98% accuracy in 71501, the synchronization of IMSEG to GIS and then ALI to GIS, really is only an attribution to attribution. You're welcome. Attribution to attribution comparison, meaning does 123 North Main Street reside here, and does 123 North Main Street reside here? Those comparisons are not comparing. Does 123 North Main Street, Denver, Colorado exists here, but do my other polygons, my other emergency services boundaries, and everything else correlate correctly? Because you have to remember that GIS and NG 911 has to do what the MSAC does today and support the alley database the way it does today. So if my address point says one thing, my road center line has to say the same thing. Because if I can't find an address point when the call comes in, it defaults to the road center line, right? So it's a little bit more intensive work than the road center line you're going to get from your public works department. So that, and there are some required fields that are strictly NG 911 business need driven. And it's those fields, your service year, your service year and all that, those fields that actually communicate with your EZNet to know what the next hop is. So it's not star code transfers any longer, it's not 10-digit transfers, it is that IP communication that says, you know, hey, where does my next hop go? And what it does is such a, when I saw it in action, I was like, oh my God, I finally connecting the dots. I'm not always a conceptual person. So when the call comes in, what it does is it drills through the GIS based on that point of the map, right? And the map being your actual core services. And from your core services, it says, okay, I found my address point, and it drills through and it goes, who's my PSAP, which routes your primary routing, right? Your emergency service boundaries, you kind of consider like your secondary transfer. It's going to look at your emergency service boundaries and go, if I had to transfer to law enforcement, where would it go based on that point of the map? And it's going to send that service URI to, you know, to the data. The data is going to say, okay, I find that, respond with the service URI of this. It's going to, depending on, it's way more complicated. It's way more complicated. Did I mention I was a dispatcher? But basically, what's important for your GIS folks to know is that you're not just building a map, folks. You are building this sophisticated emergency call routing network that has to communicate with that EZNet to be able to make things work right. I'm sorry, I went beyond your question.
No, that's okay. Beyond the question is good.
So far, right? So, yeah, it was really remarkable. We'll talk offline. It's really cool.
Anybody else?
What is Datamark? Do you provide services?
So we do, yes, sir. Yeah. So, we specifically help you with your NG 911 and GIS needs for GIS. Yes, sir. We also have software that will support all that. We're one of many companies that do it. I'm not here to do a sales pitch or anything. It was really here to hopefully educate without boring you too much. You should really do one of my workshops. I'm much more fun in that. In this type of content, I really am a fun person. It's really kind of dry. But yes, that's what our company, so primarily what I do in the company is do this. I go out, I speak to people, I educate, I build workshops. But then we also, of course, have software applications. We have all the testing that needs to happen. We're able to build GIS, remediate your GIS. We're a full package as far as that is concerned. But going back to when you go to RFP, right, and you go through all this first, when you go to RFP, you're going to want to make sure you're hiring the right companies to help meet that need, and that's what I'm recommending this process will help educate you on. I'm so sorry, Ms. Mann. Sorry.
I promise I'll be quick. Just as the GIS side of the house here, and speaking really as a GIS advocate, when I worked as a GIS analyst, I was forever getting data sets that were particular only to the specific agency that I was doing a project for. And all of that data, of course, dropped off at the edge of their PSAP boundary. And so the concept of being able to do mutual aid or any type of assistance or even routing beyond that boundary literally fell off the edge of the earth in those types of situations. So for me, the biggest takeaway for GIS in Next Gen, and really maybe a takeaway for all of you on the task force, even without your GIS committee, is that, you know, typically I don't necessarily advocate a top-down approach to anything. I like people to be able to make their own decisions and generate grassroots movements and whatnot. However, in this situation, I believe that you all are in a fantastic position to start creating the culture that really rolled GIS in. Sandy already spoke really eloquently about how GIS folks are now building the data that's going to help save lives. They don't all know it. I can't tell you how many GIS folks I would get on the phone who would say, I just got an email that I need to provide this data, but I don't know what I'm doing, and this isn't part of my job description, and what do you want from me, really? So I think to have a culture created that starts actively seeking out and communicating with all the GIS people in Colorado who are going to be participating in this GIS effort, and start getting them on board and inviting them in, and no longer looking at it as we're a PSAT and we have some maps and we have data that maybe a GIS person is going to help me put into my CAD. Maybe I've got a call display map, and that's great. But really actively to cement that relationship and be working with the GIS people and welcoming them in, really, to me, as a level of first responder, because they're literally building that base map.
Right, and let me just follow up on one more thing, and I promise I'll stop talking after this. Well, I can't make those promises, I'm sorry, that's just not me. That falling off the edge of the earth, that was really a hard paradigm shift for not just my GIS, but my PSAT folks. We are so used to living on our island. And while even for my display map, I'll pull in other county data, but that's a separate layer, that's not my data. And so I'm so used to, like you said, the world falls off at the end of my data, folks, I don't care beyond that. Then when we collected all the data and we merged it all together, we found all these gaps and overlaps between the data sets, and people were building data outside their jurisdiction that they shouldn't have. They needed it for like closest unit response routing and all that, but for NG 911, that can't be supported, right? Especially if you plan on doing a regional or statewide ECRF, it all has to cleanly mesh together. So what, as a grassroots effort, because again, as a state, I had no authority to make you do anything, they decided on a common framework layer. They, from county to county, decided that they were going to use the state-county boundary to help eliminate those gaps and overlaps while they're working on their internal data. By starting with a common framework that already meshed together, and they built towards that, then they were minimizing the amount of work they'd have to do in solving gaps and overlaps when we actually stitched them together in the NG4 services, right? Now, we also had a relationship with the state land department who managed that data set, who was willing to make changes to that data set based on the local needs, because we had some counties who had survey points, paid a lot of money to get to figure out what their county looked like. And so they changed based on this better data, the framework data set. We were also very clear, because I don't know if this happens in Colorado, that this is only for 911 purposes only. We are not determining jurisdiction. We're not here to say if this is Yavapai County or Maricopa County. We're just trying to route calls. And the reason we had to be very clear about that is because we have some counties who are currently in litigation over what that boundary line should look like. And I'm not defining that. Trust me, us GIS and public safety folks, we're not trying to define that. We're just trying to get people there to help. So we have to be very clear about that. I promise I will stop talking. I'm going to way overrun. Thank you. I hope we see you at Standards and Best Practice.
So, I know we are over, but I want to make sure nobody on the phone had a chance to ask any questions. Does anybody on the phone have any questions they'd like to ask? And I can also get you Sandy's contact information if you want to make some follow-up questions.
Absolutely. Yes, we'd love to be able to respond to your concerns. And I'm sorry, but I think I drank too much water.
That was mine, that's okay. I don't have any tweets, so.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. That was awkward. You're like, no more committees. I'm like,
All right, everybody on the phone, have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.